The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Morning, Jamie.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I am very good. It's a beautiful, beautiful month.
It is.
It is July. It's the middle of summer.
The only thing is, I don't think in the last 30 days, at least around southeastern Pennsylvania, I don't know what it's like in southwestern, but we could use a little more rain here. It's a little too dry. So
just a bit. My garden is it's not struggling because I get out there, but it would be nice to not have to water it.
Yeah, I think rain's sorely needed right now. So I'm not wishing for like floodwaters, but I'd like to see a little bit of rain to cool down some of this heat that we're getting in Pennsylvania.
Just a little, but it's lovely. I always try to like stay present in the season.
Yeah.
Fall is my favorite season. I just love fall. Like I'm waiting for fall, but I'm like really trying to enjoy this beautiful weather. We are taking the kids to a festival today.
Nice.
So we're going out and trying to get outside. Yeah.
That's good.
So, and I know that you've also been getting outside.
I have been getting outside. I burn very quickly. So
but you look beautiful. Like you don't look sunburned. You look glowy. So yeah, I know.
It's all even with the burn. Yes. So.
I wear hats when I go outside. So like usually my face doesn't get stuff, but like but I'm also pale and I also burn very, very easily.
Yeah, my favorite season's the winter. So I'm excited when we get to the winter. But then again, I was born in February. I was born during a snowstorm. I was told this. So it's really no little wonder.
So you're Allison Stormborn.
Stormborn. Oh, yeah. Like Daenerys Targaryen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. House of the Dragon.
Yeah, we'll get into lots of that stuff, maybe in bonus stuff. But let's recap where we are. Like,
Definitely.
where is Sweetie? She is at the base.
Sweetie's working at the base, and we are still in Ottumwa, Iowa. And the last letters we heard, they were from spring of 1943. So now we're starting to head towards the summer months of 1943. She's still at the base. The base is mostly finished at this point, and the cadets are really being trained. We heard in one of the previous letters that the cadets were sent back to the barracks. It's time to get out of town. So because of that, we now know that there's a lot, even more activity going on at NAS Ottumwa. And we also know Jean's graduation from nursing school is coming up.
Oh.
So yay for Jean. Yes. And she's been in Iowa City the whole time. The first letter is actually going to be going to her parents. So not to Jean. The second two letters are going to Jean, of course, because that's the main receiver of all of Sweetie's letters. But the first one's going to go to her parents, Dr. Chester and Laura, who are out in Lacona, Iowa. Now, I will say when this first letter comes up on the screen, and for those that are listening to the audio only, there is no date technically on this letter. And this is another part of sleuthing that goes on when you're going through letters. Every now and then you get to a document not dated. Everybody, please date your letters for the future historians. But you can work these things out because you've got the context of the letter. And like right now, I'm working on transcribing letters from 1952. And at the end of 1951, I had like 3 letters I was sure were probably from 1951, but they weren't dated. But I couldn't figure out until I'd read through all the other letters where they belonged. And then it's like, aha, this one goes here. These letters, this letter actually that we're going to be looking at this morning, the one to the parents, is not dated. However, I have been able to sleuth that it should have been dated May 4th of 1943. And that's really exciting when it's not just a range of dates, but we actually get the actual date. And it's because since we're not presenting these in the podcast, I have them with me here. She references in a couple of postcards. Now, we think about postcards, cool image right in the front, and then we have the back piece, right? And we have the address on one side, and you've got your little note. These are different type of postcards. I don't think these really hit the mail too many times, but I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So there's the front. No pretty image. This is the postal card. This is being sent out to Miss Jean Demery at the same address we've been seeing. The Postal Service says postmarked May 1st. And then on the back is the letter. Am I holding this up right? Yes. So on the back is the letter. And then she also sent out another card as well on the same day. That's kind of unusual. And on the back is the letter. So instead of our standard postal card that we usually see, we've got front. Now, I wonder, it's basically imagine sending an index card in the mail, right? And stamping it. I would assume the Postal Service would probably still accept this as a card, because this is like the quick note. Think of the letter as your blog post or your email. This is the text message. Right? We got to get a quick note over. And what happens with these postal cards is they reference when she's going to go to her parents, which is the context of the letter that we're going to be listening to.
Oh.
So from these, we're able to figure out what day she was planning on going. And from all of that, I was able to work out that it should be May 4th, 1943, that the letter was written after a weekend trip that she took. Because the one thing she gives us is it's Tuesday morning. So if we can figure out what date she was there and go back to the calendar from 1943, we can work out the actual date. Which I thought was interesting.
You're just so happy too that you're just like,
yeah, got it. I got this one. It's so sad. It's a very satisfying feeling.
Oh yeah.
Like, this is the missing piece. I can fix this. But again, you have to go through all these contents of collections. But without further ado, here's the letter from May 4th of 1943. Tuesday, May 4th, 1943. Dear folks, Betty and I got home at about 4, and we went directly to her house to parade the clothes for her mother to see. We saw you when we were on the train, but we were so far right of where you were standing that we could not catch your eye. But anyway, we waved in hopes you'd look. Betty. She was surprised to the open-mouthed stage when Betty announced that after this package of cigarettes was gone, she'd never buy any more, 'cause she didn't want to die with lung cancer as Dr. Demery showed her she might. Betty also announced that she was not going to drink Cokes for a camera because she thought Dr. Demery would help her get film. She went upstairs shortly afterward and started sewing on a skirt. Yeah. Dr. Demery has made quite the impression on Betty Corey. And for anybody that didn't listen to some of the previous episodes, just to set the stage here, the Coreys are very, very close now with Sweetie. They're both living in Ottumwa. The Coreys literally live right up the hill from her house at 120 North Holt. So she could basically go outside on her porch, make a right turn, go up the hill about 30 feet, and she's at the Coreys' front door. Because when I went to Ottumwa, I went to go find the locations of these. I'm like, oh, this is why she's hanging out all the time. And Mr. Corey is giving her rides to the base because he also works there. She's developed this relationship with Betty's mother, Eleanor. And the Coreys have 2 children, the elder of which is Betty, who's in high school. So what's happened here is over the past weekend, Sweetie has actually taken Betty to go visit her folks back in Lacona. And then Dr. Demery, who is really, really big on education, has influenced Betty to be a better student and to think about things more, of which Eleanor Corey, the Corey parents, are extremely happy at this. Like, oh, good. Yeah, she wants to pay attention in school. She wants to do well. And we're going to see how that goes.
Yeah, having a teenager, she sounds a little bit defiant.
Yep.
And to say, she said after this pack of cigarettes, she wasn't going to buy any more, but she was going to finish that pack of cigarettes.
Finish it first, yeah.
So we'll see, how that sticks.
Too, and when she made announcement of her several resolutions, I had high hopes too. But yesterday at about 3:30, her mother called to say that Betty had called her from school to say she had a toothache. She had the tooth pulled 2 weeks ago, and that she was going to come home now, stick out the afternoon, just to prove you can do it. Mrs. Corey said, Betty, you stayed all morning, now stick out the afternoon just to prove you can do it. Make yourself do it, even if you don't want to. Betty announced that she'd asked permission of her teachers and that she was leaving. Just about 15 minutes later, her advisor called home to find out what had become of Betty. She'd walked out without saying anything to anybody. Mrs. Corey said she'd stopped to see the dentist. What dentist? Dr. Houlihan. So they called, and Dr. Houlihan was out of town until Thursday. Mrs. Corey was practically in tears, so I took the station wagon and hurried in town looking for her. I found she'd been in the Pink Pig for cakes and had just disappeared. Well, I went to all the movies and looked for her, all the drugstores or restaurants that thought she might be, and then called home and found she was there. Well, I was pretty disgusted, so I went out to their place and found her, apparently without a toothache, arguing about the silliness of their worrying about the whole thing. Someone's
So she
skipping
skipped
school.
school.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
She skipped school and then made a little fake story so she could go to the Pink Pig and have cake.
Yep. So she could go to the Pink Pig and have cake. And actually, it's interesting. I was looking up the Pink Pig because the Pink Pig had been referenced in the dates with Indiana a couple letters ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I wonder what happened to the Pink Pig. Because when I went to Ottumwa, there is one of the restaurants is still there. It's called the Cafe in the Alley. It's from I think it actually was there from like 20s or 30s, but it's there as it was at least from the 40s. So it's a great little stop. If you're ever in Ottumwa, check out the Cafe in the Alley. But I was trying to figure out what happened to the Pink Pig. And on eBay, I actually found a restaurant menu for the Pink Pig from 1947. And upon some further research, because I love that I get to see like the prices and things and what they were, having. So 1947, you figure 1943, it's probably pretty similar. The Pink Pig actually closed, I think, in the 60s, but it has since reopened the same location called the Second Street Cafe, and it's in the Hotel Ottumwa, which is pretty much across, I think, from the Cafe in the Alley. I remember seeing it on the main road there. And the Hotel Ottumwa was like this grand, old hotel. It's also in operation. So yeah, so the location and the restaurant may have changed its name, but it was originally the Pink Pig back then. And the neat thing is there is a restaurant there today, and it is in the, the same location in the hotel. But outside of that, Betty, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Upsetting her mom.
Well, but it goes to show you that it's like teen angst and defiance is nothing new.
Yep.
It's been around. I mean, you have your defiance, you have your rebels, I guess.
Right. And I love how Sweetie is like literally going to all the places being like, was she here? And she's like looking for her pretty intently to find out where she got to. One of the classes she skipped was algebra. She makes a B in that. The rest of her grades are D's. She's got a nice bunch of teachers. They've done more for her than she deserves, and now they're getting down on her, and it will be increasingly hard on her. She says it's her business what she does. Well, when I went to the house, I told her I'd do whatever I could to help her, if she'd meet me halfway and try to be a little more pleasing at home to relieve the tension there. Honestly, that's what's causing part of her troubles. They're always at swords' points. She said she would. I said I'd talk to her mother and let her know what we were trying to do. She said she was having a test the next day in sociology, and I said I'd help her get it if I could, though I'd never had any sociology. Yeah, and also, I think Sweetie's coming from a different perspective here. Sweetie's the youngest of 5 children. So if anybody was going to test the limits against Mrs. Demery, against her mother, it was probably going to be sister, Margaret, or Jean, as the elder 2 sisters, as well as the 2 brothers. In contrast here, Betty is the oldest of 2 daughters, of 2 children of the Coreys. So she's the first child, and she's probably testing her mom's limits, as a lot of us. I mean, I remember I did 100% when I was Betty's age.
Oh,
so, there wasn't
It's good for Sweetie to see that. It's good for Sweetie to be, and it's good for like a younger, because like that's what children are designed to start pushing against their parents at a certain age.
Yep.
They start like pushing those boundaries and learning how to assert themselves. And it's very important that they have other adults around to kind of help out. And that's what Sweetie's doing. Yeah. She's not her mother.
Right.
And I mean, she obviously, like she said, she's at swords points. So there's, so they're having their problems. But we have Sweetie here, which is really great because she's coming in. She's helping to look for her. She's helping to talk to her. She's taking her and she's trying to like help out. And so it sounds like Betty's just constantly pushing and they're trying to be nice about it right now.
Yeah.
So I don't have too much hope. I don't have too much hope though for Betty to change. I think she's going to need to sound a little bit more pushing.
Yeah, I think, with this kind of, if you're at the point where you're skipping school and coming up with elaborate excuses about the dentist, this isn't just a one-time, kind of activity. And her grades are showing it too, right? Except for one subject, she's at D's. So I doubt this is the first time she's skipped school. Or if she isn't skipping school, she's not paying attention to class. Or she's not doing her homework. And we already know, Sweetie's saying it, her teachers, they were helping her for a while there. So.
Yep.
Well, there's a kid who works out here. He's as smart as he can be. But because he's nearly blind, had cataracts, I think, he has an inferiority complex and started drinking. He had a scholarship at IU, big enough that he'd been able to go to school for $25 per year. He's unusually bright and his sense of humor is real. That's what attracted me to him at first. And Carrie Nation Demery, I went to work on the drinking angle, and he's proud to come and tell me he's just about quit. Well, he asked me for a date, and I turned him down, and he thought I wouldn't go with him because he was half blind. So because he's smart, I asked him if he'd come over and help tutor Betty. He did, and if she manages to pass that test, it will be through his efforts solely. Not only that, but he lit into her for having walked out of school, sassing her folks, etc. If she paid any attention at all, it might help, but I'm afraid it's just a case of water and a duck's back. Yeah, we get one of these phrases. I wanted to bring up here Carrie Nation Demery. I think she mentioned Carrie Nation in a pretty early letter that we had. Carrie Nation is really part of the temperance movement, but this is pre-prohibition temperance. So it's an individual that, doesn't drink. And because Sweetie herself, she doesn't really drink, she is calling herself Carrie Nation Demery and taking that on as a nickname here. George Pearsall, that's his name, is 21. He's really got the brain, but he needs a big push. I guess he's the next one I'll have to bring home for Daddy to help. He'd absorb it. Well, as you can see now, it didn't do Betty much good. He's suffering now because he can't get into any branch of the armed forces, though he still holds out hope for the Merchant Marines. As I say, he's 21 and all his friends are gone. His 19-year-old brother leaves this week for Iowa City's pre-flight. He sent home a math test that George did for him and sent back so he wouldn't flunk out. And George is just sick because he can't go and look out for him. I do feel sorry for him, but just the same I like him too. He's a potential artist if he'd just cultivate it. A good one too. He was very much interested in Daddy's paintings. I told him of the photography, the paintings, the workshop, and then when he said, I'd like to meet that guy, I got out all the pictures I had of the whole family and showed him my mom and dad, and when he saw the boys in their uniforms, I was sorry I'd showed them to him. He's so sick of seeing all his friends leave that he's written to Alaska, Africa, South America, Panama, and such places to see if he can't go somewhere to do something that's more important than what he's doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, so he had preclusions that kept him from the military.
Kept him from service, yeah, at least the armed service. He's hoping he can get into the Merchant Marines. It's not clear if he's going to be able to do that. This just, it reminds me, just to relate it to the modern audience, one of my favorite Marvel films is actually the first Captain America movie that they did. And it's that scene when Steve Rogers, his friends can go into the military, but he can't, right at the beginning of the film. And I think that sort of dramatizes it really, really well, which is here's everybody going. And we were talking about this with the Iowa statistics a couple episodes ago about how, they have that legacy all the way back from the Civil War where over half of the men in Iowa joined the Union Army, and then that legacy being there. And so we could expect just how many men were going into the armed services by the time we get to World War II, when it's just family, legacy. Here's George's brother at 19 going into pre-flight training, and he can't go. And it's just that feeling of, I'm being left behind. I can't control this thing. I want to go with everybody else. And it made me think of that scene in Captain America. I think they dramatize it so well, but that was really the sentiment of the time, was you did not want to be left behind when everybody else is going. And there's no question here. So I feel so bad for George that he couldn't join his friends.
I mean, and that's what they want to do. It's it's a sense of pride to be able to work together. And also, I mean, he's got family over there too. And that's just, my heart breaks for him.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to do is solve his problem. He's like, well, maybe I can do something else.
Maybe I can do this.
And when you are being defeated like that, where you're like, no, we can't. No. Oh, man. I hope we hear more about George.
Yeah. George seems like a good guy. He wants to have purpose.
Yes.
With what he's doing.
Yes.
And I feel that there's even, today, it's all generations. There's a lot of people that just keep seeking purpose, but are really struggling to find it And it takes a while. So if you're listening and you're one of those people that you haven't exactly found the exact thing that you want to be doing, that's okay. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to get there. Some people, they find it really quickly and they just go for it. And some people, it's going to take longer. It's different for everybody. But the big thing here is never giving up. And, that's what we hope in the story for George that we hear at some point is that, he gets to whatever point he can get to where he feels he has that purpose. And even though he's momentarily defeated here, where he's not able to just join the forces, at least he's looking at options. There's always opportunity and options for those that seek it. So, yeah.
And too, like the fact that he's trying, Sweetie wants to help him.
Yeah. Exactly.
And, and he's also helping too. He's being an adult and he's being, a male figure as well and letting Betty know.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that she is going to just keep pushing it until something eventually happens to the point where she's like, wait a minute, maybe I do need my mom and dad.
Yeah. I think we all have that realization at some point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's part of growing up, I think.
Yeah.
But yes, I do hope. And then I do love how Sweetie is. She's such a good heart trying to help all these people.
Yeah. Dear, now I have 2 problem children. I guess you never see just how fortunate you are to have good eyes, health, and high ideals and standards. And most of all, you don't realize or appreciate home background until you meet up with Betty Corey's or George Pearsall's. Then it really hits you between the eyes, and you think, thank God for my mother and father. Love, Sweetie.
Thank God for my mother and father.
Yeah.
I just love this. I just love how she's like, this is what suffering does. This is what suffering will do for you. If you, and seeing it and seeing people go through that really makes you appreciate what you have.
Yep. Yeah.
I just love her. I just love Sweetie.
Yeah. And
I'm going to start crying.
I know. I was reading this morning, just the phrase, good eyes and health. Okay, great. And high ideals and standards. I don't think this is talked about really enough. It's not just about, you can have your good health and you can go through life directionless, right? You can have great standards and ideals and not have good health. And then, you're not going to be around as long as maybe you'd like to be or as other people would like you to be because you're not taking care of yourself. But it's both taken together. It's the mind and the body, right? And the spirit. And she's just getting straight to that. And I love that she calls out ideals and standards, that there are standards. We can all say everybody can do whatever they want. And that, great, whatever you're going to do. But having standards is so important because how do you meet purpose without an objective? How do you have a goal with no standards to get to that goal? And her parents have ingrained this in her. Now, she has the advantage, right? Because her father's a doctor. He's achieved the highest academic level, right? He's got the MD to be able to practice medicine. And then on top of that, his wife is an RN. So she's pretty well educated. I was actually going through some older documents, and there's a point in one document where, we could say, okay, this is the doctor and his wife. And amazingly, there was a note from someone, I forget the reference where it came from, that was talking about Laura years and years later, her mom. And it said, her mom was in school as a kid, and she was in school with Native American children or descendants. And she started to pick up some of the language of the Native Americans, and she started to use some of the phrases in her life to describe things. That was like, to me, it's just like she always was academic and incredibly intelligent as well at a young age, even if she didn't have the MD next to her name. So Sweetie has this from both of her parents. And then she has it from her siblings as well. Frank's doing well. Bob is clearly really looked up to. Jean's in nursing school. Margaret's married and settled with a family. And she knows as well for her siblings, she's been in this very healthy environment. And that's not to say the Coreys and the Pearsalls didn't have a supportive environment, but she's thinking it's not to the level that she's had. So she's trying to give that to George and to Betty. And that's why she's taking Betty home to see her father. she's hoping maybe doctor can rub off on that academic experience on Betty. And hey, I should take George there too. And it also referenced, actually, in the previous slide here, that Chester also paints. And this is fascinating. We haven't heard about Chester doing some artwork, but he is a painter, an amateur painter, and some of his paintings have survived, and that'll come up down the line.
Oh, that'll be so fun. Chester uses both sides of his brain.
He does, yeah.
He does, and I mean, you can tell that the kids really got a good experience. And Sweetie, when she was in Parsons, she was pushing against her father and her mother a little bit. You know, they said, we don't want you to go do this business course, and she was like, I'm going to go do this, and now, you know, see where she's at. But she didn't go, I'm going to do this just to spite you.
Yeah.
She did it because she knew it was right for her.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go back to what, you know, talking about high ideals and standards. You have to be good in order to produce good.
Yeah.
It has to be something where it's like, when you work through this ideal, it's important to operate from a place of good, and it's important to recognize your actions, and it's important to recognize what the consequences of those actions are. And so you're seeing like Betty, and she's not understanding the consequences of her actions. She's not really suffering anything right now. She's getting yelled at a little bit, but that's it. That's it, you know. And poor George, he's suffering from consequences that are suffering from actions, things that he had no control over. And, you know, coming through this, like, it just, but I really do like that you put that together. The good eyes and good health, and the high ideals and standards.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, okay. It has to be both. It has to be both, sure.
It has to be both.
Daddy, I did take and am taking good care of the camera. However, I haven't had a chance to use it yet. Frank's letter from overseas came that I shall pass on right away. I won't either be a bottleneck. Yeah, and then we get the update here for Frank. Now, Frank had just gotten married to Maida back in March of 1943. And from this letter, we get the update. He is definitely overseas at this point. So he has been deployed wherever he was deployed. And Maida remains at home.
As so many did.
As so many did. And just we're waiting, hoping that things went well.
The next one.
Yeah, next letter. Here we have May 13th, 1943. This letter did have a date on it, so didn't have to sleuth that one. Ottumwa, Iowa, May 13th, 1943. Dear Jean, it's nice to talk to you, but it would be nicer to see you, to talk to you. I've wished these last few days we could get together. It's like losing touch with the whole family. Not so very long ago, a week ago last Saturday, I went home and took Betty Corey along so Daddy could go to work on her. He did, and I rather thought he'd done her some good, but I guess it didn't stick with her very long. We went to the local juke joint and had some fun, not a great deal, but it showed Betty what the small-time gals do for enjoyment, how they've been taught to respect the fourth commandment, and to respect their folks. I do believe she's better than she was, but she has a long way to go. Yeah, so Sweetie's now updating Jean on the same subject matter that she was updating her parents on for the previous letter. And I just love that she talks a little bit about what the small town of Lacona has to offer. And she's showing that comparison because Betty's used to being in Ottumwa, which by comparison to Lacona, that's a city.
Yeah.
Right? So we just have like this little place we hang out, but it's fine. About this work, Lieutenant Commander Wilson, called Commander, has been attached to the Bureau of Yards and Docks in Washington as the officer in charge of construction. But he got orders last week that he was detached from the Bureau and was to report to the CO here at the base as the Public Works Officer. I hear that he's closing out the contractors and that by June 1st he'll dismiss the civilian personnel. However, this AM, a telegram came in saying that he could have 35 people put on civil service this month, and that they would remain on here as the Public Works Organization. This is hearsay, of course, and so I don't know much about it, nor do I know where I stand. I might go to the West Coast, to Oregon, or to the Gulf, or even to Central America. In view of this, I've taken care of every bill I have. I have my Parsons note marked paid in full. I've paid for this furniture. I've paid all I owe on clothes. I've paid for my luggage. And I have 8 bonds, 2 purchase cash, 6 on 10% of my check. And I've loaned Mrs. Corey $20. How's that? Do you have your graduation clothes? I'll be glad to send you whatever you need. We are postponing the wedding gifts for a while, I think. We'll be able to get them whenever we like. And they don't have any need for them right now. Lots of stuff going on here in this letter. And it's only, 9 days after the letter that she writes to her folks. Something might be going on with having to leave Ottumwa, based on whatever the civil service decides to do. Can people stay? It seems like 35 people are going to be able to stay. But in these sorts of service organizations, once you join them, if there's a need for you to be elsewhere, you're sent elsewhere. So that's why she's saying, I could really wind up anywhere. Whether it's, we're talking West Coast and Oregon, to the Gulf, or to Central America. So that's a lot of different options that she is thinking about. So she's getting her affairs in order and saying, I have to finish paying off any debts I owe. She doesn't want anything for her parents to have to take care of if she all of a sudden has to go. I love that she says Parsons is paid in full. That means her college tuition is done being paid for within a year and a half of having attended for the semester, which I love. I wish we could all pay off our college tuition in that time frame, but it's a little different these days. The furniture, because she was buying the coffee table, she was shopping around. She had clothes on layaway, so clearly she's purchased those, and those are all paid off. And then the purchase of government bonds as well, which I don't think that too many people in their 20s at least are thinking about purchasing government bonds, at least not 8 of them, and on a portion of their salary for the future investment there. And that's impressive, I think, that she says, I have these bonds. And she puts that underlining there, right? And I got these bonds. Aren't you proud of me? So
I think we have established that Sweetie had a bit of a, I don't want to say advantage, but I think that is something that you can say, is that she had an advantage. She had a good home life.
Yep.
She had a mother and a father who loved her and took care of her and didn't, they weren't her friends, they were her parents.
Yeah.
And so she has better understanding of a lot of things. And she's very strong-willed. Like, she went and did all this stuff on her own.
Yes.
So at this young age. So this is like, I'd be like, oh, of course she did. Of course she bought bonds. She's Sweetie.
Yeah. She just figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the loan too.
Oh yeah. And then she's made sure that you got $20 just in case.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if Mrs. Corey needed anything, if I was Sweetie, I'd be helping out the Coreys, because they're helping you out nonstop with all the lunches.
She's helping out the Coreys. She's taking Betty and she's like, here, I'm going to see if I can straighten her out a little bit for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's helping them. She's there too. And her sister. Making sure she's got graduation clothes.
Yep. And then they're talking about the wedding gifts. So it seems like, even though Frank and Maida got married, I have to imagine this is the wedding they're talking about.
Yeah.
That they're postponing some of the purchasing until things are settled after wartime.
Yeah, probably. What do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've written to the folks and David and you tonight. I'm still a long way from done, but Bob hasn't written to me since he's been gone. I wrote to them and said I'd find out from the Coreys the name of a reliable real estate agent who'd help them find a place, but they didn't answer, so I had to let it go. There's to be a blackout tonight, and I expect to creep up on me at any time, hence the scribble. I wonder how well they'll do. They issued definite orders out of the station, as well as threats of dire punishment for violation. Yeah, and I wanted to pause here about the blackout that was being referenced here. So I figured I should look up really what the definition was and what the punishment was for this blackout that they're talking about. So this can be citywide, this could be statewide. The blackout is exterior lighting being turned off. So think about neon signs, think about, all of the externals. This was a lot more in Europe right? Because the problem was if there was enemy aircraft overhead looking for targets, the idea was if you turn off all of the external lights, they can't find the targets to hit. So these are practice drills, essentially. And they were practicing this as far inland. You can imagine they're probably doing it a lot more in some of the cities, but they're practicing this as far inland in the United States, fearing the potential of an aerial attack to make sure everybody knows. Think about the nuclear drill, the sirens, right? Now, when I was in school, it was really like, it was the early 90s when I was in elementary school. I think this is the last time that we actually had a couple of these little alarm drills about duck and cover under your desk, as was Lewis Black equipped as a comedian. You know, you're hiding under kindling. You know? So if there's a nuclear attack, you know, it's that idea of drill. And so there would be punishments. And I looked at some of the local papers in Iowa that were talking about blackouts in 1943. And what it mentioned was fines. So they were trying to hold people accountable by fining them. So if you're out during the blackout or you got the lights on that you're not supposed to have on and we're all practicing this drill, you're going to get fined. Now, whether or not they ultimately paid all those fines, they certainly were having court hearings about it. Because I did find, some reference of people going to court saying they had the sign on during the blackout. They're not supposed to do that. But that's what that was, just to give that a little context. And I don't know. I can't remember ever having a drill like this. So
not a blackout drill.
Not a blackout. Yeah. The only one probably early elementary school, and that was right at the fall of the Soviet Union, had to be, you know, the duck and cover drill. And I don't know, maybe I even kind of suspect that my teacher was doing it like, oh, this is what we used to have to do. And she was, you know, we were elementary school kids. So it's like, we're going to hide under our desks. That's about the extent of it.
Oh, okay. Sure. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, this will work. You know, and it's like also that kid's mind being like, I don't know what this desk is going to do for me, but okay, sure.
Bob is married to
Florence. Yep.
Okay. And Frank's married to Maida. So she hasn't heard from Bob, but she did write to David.
To David.
David Chase.
Yep. David Chase again. Still writing.
One in her back pocket. Yep. I think that's why she's keeping them. I'm just gonna put that out there.
just in case, yeah.
But she did write to David as well.
Yep. She's been writing pretty continuously to David. Just as an acquaintance, it would seem, though.
Yeah.
I've been out with a few cadets. They're having an increase of startling proportions in venereal diseases. One got shot, another in the stomach. And there's a slim chance he'll live. A very great chance that the other will spend the rest of his life in the jug. I don't know the particulars. Well, I can almost hear those sirens, so I'll quit and at least start another letter. That'll be a good reason to stop. Right, dearie. Lots of love. Sweetie. She can almost hear the sirens for the blackout that they're going to be doing. Yeah, I was looking in the newspapers as well for reference to this incident at the base where the individual was shot. I did not find it. Not yet.
They probably did not want to advertise that kind of stuff.
No.
We're just going to gloss over the venereal diseases?
Yeah.
Just going to be like,
yeah. So, well, I wonder how that happened. That's about all we can say for that. So.
That's all we can say. Oh, that is a damn shame. All right, then.
There it is.
So that was a very lovely letter. And so we do have one more on board.
We do, yeah. This is a letter from early June. June 3rd, 1943. From your little sister to Jean Demery, RN, West Lawn Nurses Home, Iowa City, Iowa. Subject, nothing, discussion of. I think this is so cute that she's putting a memo in. And I did bring out the original document here for the people that are watching the video. This is on the letterhead, the early letterhead they had before they had the logo for the naval base in Ottumwa. So if you can see this is why it says it like this. So she's filling out the memo paper from the base. She does this a few times.
Yeah.
It says at the top here, U.S. Naval Reserve Aviation Base contract looks like number 5710 memorandum, and she's got it dated here. So she's practicing her typing on the letterhead, and she's putting that there. So her in RE, we usually see these emails in RE that's basically her subject. Nothing, comma, discussion of nothing. I think it's cute.
She's funny.
She's funny.
Well, and two, Jean's an RN now.
Yep, we see that. We finally see Jean being referenced as the RN, and we can see where she started to work. I was talking with George Pearsall last night, and he told me that they were going to go to Iowa City on June 13th to see his younger brother, who is a cadet in pre-flight. They'll go and spend the day, probably leave here early in the morning and come home when he has to report back to Hillcrest. They're taking the cadet's girl, along, and George knows I have a sister in Iowa City, and so he has asked me if I'd like to go along. As near as I know now, I could come just for the day, but I don't know for sure that I want to come if you can't get a long day. That's why I'm writing to you right now. I'm waiting for the mail to come in, and I thought I should write to you now in order that you could ask for a long day on the 13th. Be sure you write and tell me about it right away, or rather just as soon as you can. I've told him that I will have to wait until I hear from you before I decide what I'm going to do. So you should write and tell me just as soon as you can what you can or cannot do about it. I thought what's interesting here is the definition. I don't think I've heard it referenced to these days anymore as I've asked for a long day. To me, this is requesting PTO, basically.
Yeah.
Take paid time off. But the terminology of please request a long day must have evolved over the years, because I've never had any one of the employees that report to me when I'm at work or myself request from my boss. Maybe I'll try it, the next day. I'd like to take a long day on Monday. I'll just go back to the old terms.
Well, but it makes sense, right? Because it's like the day you get up in the morning and you don't have to do anything. And it's like you have a long day to just do whatever. Instead of like you go to work and then you come home and then you have a short day.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Maybe we should bring that back.
I think, I'm going to test it.
I'd like to take a long day.
And then my boss will probably be like, what are you talking about? So I'll be like, I'd like a long day. And then I'll send him like a reference online or something to it. And he'll be like, cut it out. You just tell me you want PTO. Yeah. I rather thought your bus ride would be tiresome and more than a little disgusting, but I guess you really have to pay for what you get. I have taken good care of your cadet's picture, and I've looked longingly at it, especially since my cadet has not called. Here's the mail. Here I go again. I'm beginning to wonder now if he will call. I rather doubt it. Well, I didn't think so much of him that it makes me feel badly. It's just that I thought he was pretty nice, and he was entertainment after a long day of work and nothing to do to while away the evening. I got 3 letters from David Monday. Consolation for your leaving, I guess. None of them were very happy. He must have been in a foul mood when he wrote them. Of course, the fact that I hadn't written to him for a long time had nothing to do with it. Well, I wrote to Mom and Dad, and to McGint and Bill, and to David, and to Charles Stevenson. I sent David one of those proofs of my glamour picture. I had to write a regular letter, as it could not be sent in a V-mail letter. And since he was feeling pretty badly, I sent him a cablegram, one of those fixed phrase things that cost 69 cents. His birthday is coming up next month, but there's nothing I can send him unless I get a letter from him requesting something. Then I'd have to take the letter with me to the post office and prove that he had asked for it. Well, it takes nearly a month for a letter to get to him. So I wished him happy birthday and sent the picture. And I thought this was really a fascinating part because it goes over all the different types of post to get to the front here, which is very, very interesting. The V-mail letter,
I wonder what that is. What is that?
So the V-mail letter is called Victory Mail, and it specifically weighs less so that you can get more overseas. Gotcha. So the fact that she wants to put a picture in there, it's going to make it way too much.
Oh, her glamour picture.
The glamour picture, which I'd like to know which one is the glamour picture, but she's sending that over to him, and so she has to use the standard mail as opposed to the Victory Mail, the V-mail. And then there's this interesting part of the post office where it says, she's like, I want to send him something for his birthday, but I can't unless he requests something. And then I have to show proof.
Yes.
that he requested it from his letter so I can send it to him. So it really seems like, we're in June of 1943. We are just a year before D-Day. If we look at the historical timeline, any amount of space, especially now that we've got a certain type of mail that's going over, sort of more express, so they can get more supplies over, they're not going to waste any space on packages going to the men at the front if essentials have to get over first. And so they're not saying, you can't send anything to the troops, but we have to know that they are requesting it from you before you send it. And it's can you imagine if you're the postal office worker? I would love to talk with a few of these guys, if they're still around, who worked in the postal office during the war, because you can imagine I'm sure many of the family members coming into the post office saying, I want to send this to my, my son, my brother, the sweetheart that's overseas. And it's like, well, you got to have proof that they need it. And the having to say no to people, or people trying to send things in the mail and then they have to pay a different rate to just send a photo. It's all that little stuff that had to put even the pressure on, in the post. And then everybody waiting, hoping that things are coming back timely, because Sweetie's saying it takes a month to get stuff from David. So she just got 3 letters at one time from him. He was in a foul mood, I guess, a month ago. I guess he's in a different mood today, the day that she's receiving it. So yeah, just everything about the post here is so fascinating. And then of course today we don't have to deal with any of this, We can order things, send it direct.
There's a lot of restrictions, and there's a lot of things that, you can't do. Yeah. It seems kind of weird. And people just accepted this. Of course, because there's reasons behind it. Yeah. And we saw in the last episode how many boats didn't even make it over.
Right. Yeah.
And those were supply boats. A lot of those were supply boats. Tons, and I'm sure that there was some mail. But we have another, cost 69 cents. It cost 69 cents.
That's a lot there.
A lot of money back. And so this was one of the fixed phrase things. I'm guessing a cablegram is just a very miss you, love you, sweetie, something like that. Something that's, but it gets there quicker. They're like, yes, we will walk faster with this. I don't know. But anyway, but it's 69 cents.
And that is a lot back then.
That is a lot back then. Yeah.
On that menu, just to give us sort of a frame of reference for the 69 cents, the milkshake was 20 cents.
Oh, I need to know what a 20-cent milkshake tastes like.
Yep. I think it was a coffee was a nickel. So imagine, we think about the cost of coffees today. Now I go to Starbucks. So it's higher priced coffee, and I'm paying for that.
Can we use a picture of that menu?
It's a neat menu, but I was just looking at it because of some of the pricing of the menu. Okay, so here we go. So that Pink Pig menu, 1947. So probably just even a little more expensive than 1943, maybe. Hamburger on bun, 20 cents. Bacon.
What about hamburger off the bun? What about
hamburger off the bun? Well, they do. It's a different kind of hamburger in Iowa at times, because they have the made right sandwiches. And I took pictures of this on my trip.
You're going to have to pull some of this.
I'm going to put this on the screen. Yeah. I'll go through. I'll put it on the screen. They have it's like a sloppy Joe. It's like a loose burger on a bun, but without the sauce of the sloppy Joe. And then they put toppings on that.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like in Roseanne, and they're out in Illinois, I think. Okay. And they talk about a loose meat sandwich that's like that. It's like sloppy Joe, but without the so it's a loose. That must be a Midwest. That must be I
think it's a Midwestern thing. But the Made Right sandwich, Made Right is the location. They're still open. They still have places called Made Right. And I made a point to go and get a Made Right sandwich, and I had what the comparable would be at the Cafe in the Alley in Ottumwa. And it was $3, and it was delicious. So shout out to Cafe in the Alley. Everybody needs to go. I had a milkshake when I was there too. I think the total bill was $6. So go there for an excellent lunch. But right across the street would have been the Pink Pig. And so let's see, American cheese, 20 cents, so you can sort of build your burger over there. And there's some other things. So the cheeseburger total was 25 cents. The coffee was 5 cents. Milk was 10 cents. Milkshake, 20 cents. Choice of pie, 15 cents. So we can start building up our 69-cent bill and see what we can get instead of this cablegram here. We can get a milkshake for 20 cents and a cheeseburger for 25 cents. And then a pie that puts us at 45 plus 15 is 60. We have pie, cheeseburger, and milkshake. And it's still cheaper than that cablegram, if my math is right there. So I don't know.
That stuff always like, I'm just like, ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I love it. More. And then
tell me more about how cheap things used to be.
And and you know what they served? They served filet. They have filet mignon on here too, which gives us the idea, right? This is a good place. Yeah. They serve filet mignon, at least in 1947 at the Pink Pig. The grilled filet mignon was $1.75. $1.75.
Well, maybe that's what Betty was looking for.
Yeah.
When she's like, I just got to get me a milkshake from the Pink Pig. I'm not staying in school today.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then there's a couple things that I can't even identify yet what they mean. The snowflake potatoes or the lima beans. I kind of want to know what I guess maybe like grated potatoes or something. Snowflake potatoes is on the menu.
Maybe it's mashed potatoes.
Maybe. They've got the American pot roast and the chicken fried steak on here. But then they have things that are called, Canadian bacon and 2 fried eggs. I guess it's breakfast all day, kind of like a diner. And then they have braised calf sweetbreads. So they've also got some of these things that only now are American chefs starting. Chefs generally are starting to go back to, the more popular, lesser used parts of the animal. But yeah, the menu is dated May 21st, 1947. So
neat.
That's the price reference. So, okay, we can get a cheeseburger, shake, and pie for less than that cablegram. So she really wants to send the cablegram.
So we wished him a happy birthday and sent him the picture.
Yeah, so he's getting the picture. I shall try to send Bert's picture to you, or if you write and say you can get a long day on the 13th, I'll wait and bring it with me. From what you said, I think you'd be able to live from now until then without looking at it. Okay, we do have to pause here because Bert's being mentioned, and Jean had sent a photo of her cadet to Sweetie. So Sweetie's trying to return the photo back to Jean, which means Bob's not in the picture anymore.
Yeah. Her $1 million smile, man.
$1 million smile guy.
So
something's happened here. It seems like that's over. Eh? Betty saw it, and out of pure jealousy, she said she didn't think so much of him. But I know. Last night, I went downtown and bought some clothes. I've been so tired of going to work in winter corduroys and wool suits and stuff that I made up my mind that I would have some work clothes, so I went downtown and splurged. And that isn't the half of it. I'm going to keep on splurging. I saw the schedule of work and the time of completion and the number of employees that are to stay on. I'm scheduled to leave in August. I think that it is August 1st. And then Mr. Corey will be dismissed too. And I'm planning now to go with them, either to South America or to North Carolina. But I'm also planning that when I leave here in August, I'm going to have clothes by the carload. And last night gave me a good start, but it was only a start. I'm going to have every piece of luggage that I bought just loaded with clothes, and nice ones too. You wait and see. Gotta stop now. So bye. Love, Sweetie. Yeah.
Buying clothes is lots of fun.
Buying clothes is lots of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to be like, good for you, girl.
Yep. She's like, well, if I'm going to leave here, I've got all my other affairs in order. I've paid off all of my other bills. So I'm going to go out and buy some clothes. And South America or North Carolina?
North Carolina, apples, oranges.
Guess we'll see if we all of a sudden start seeing letters from South America.
That'd be crazy.
So the only thing is, I think they speak a lot of Spanish there, or Portuguese if you're in Brazil. And I don't recall that being on Sweetie's class schedule. So that's going to be a bit of an adjustment if she heads to South America.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, maybe I'll go to South America. Maybe I'll go to North Carolina.
Yeah,
I'll have off clothes. Mm-hmm. I'll have my wool suits.
I'll be ready to go. She better get some, even for North Carolina, you better get some more lightweight, breathable clothing for that.
But like you said, so she could be placed anywhere.
She could be placed anywhere, right? This is the civil service. So if you're needed somewhere, you're going to go. And she seems to be at peace with that, even if she needs to leave and be a distance away from the vast majority of her family. We were talking just a little bit ago about the ships that went down, and I did a little bit more research on this subject from the previous episode. So if anybody didn't listen to the previous episode, we were talking about looking at the casualties of World War II and just the deaths. There was a really great YouTube video that really went through this very well. But the death rate for American soldiers in World War II is about 400,000. But when we think about it, I think we think a lot of times about battlefield deaths or people dying of disease. And I don't think it really comes to mind all the time unless you're really into the World War II history with regards to especially the naval history, merchant marines, things like that, about just how many ships are being sunk in the various theaters. So I looked online and I found this site for anybody that wants to pursue this further. This seems to be pretty good. So this is it's called usmm.org. And it's a site that's dedicated to mariners in general. And the title of the site is The American Merchant Marine at War. I scrolled to the bottom here and had seen that the site was created in 1998, last updated March 15th, 2023. And they've updated quite a great deal of data onto this site for people that are looking for information about mariners in general. So this is going to be inclusive of Navy, merchant marine, all sorts of things like that. But they have actually a chronological list of the United States sunk or damaged during 43, and I assume for the other years as well. And they put total up here at 376 ships for the year. And so I was trying to pinpoint, I was still looking through newspaper articles for the two that were referenced as having sunk, and that was back in February. In February it was 32. But what's interesting about this site, and they've done a really brilliant job of this, is they've named the ship and the type of the ship. So you can see some are carrying troops, some are freighters, and the cause of the sinking. And look at how many are torpedoes.
Torpedo.
And you can see in which location.
And collisions, too.
Collisions. Yeah.
I mean,
bombings.
Damage, sunk. Wow.
Approach to the Mediterranean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at all the torpedoes down here on the, at the end. Unreal.
Yeah. It's unbelievable to think that. And you look at the dates. That's the other thing. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 in one day. 2 Liberty ships, 1 tanker, a troop ship. The troop ship, here's the deaths, right? Because it's harder to just see injuries. The ship needs to be able to recover the troops. So the biggest one if they're talking about 2 troop ships, which I'm suspecting maybe Sweetie was, the biggest one here is the Dorchester, which was struck by torpedo in the North Atlantic. And the crew was 102 per this information, but 562 troops, men on board.
You know what? Can you clarify AG maybe? What does that mean?
AG. I'll have to check to see what AG means. Yeah.
Well, that's fine, but it definitely says, okay, so, but this is incredibly detailed when you look at it.
Yeah, this site's done a great job, just
that's
putting it together. And you can see the different spots. And then just 4 days later, from the 3rd to the 7th here, we've got the Henry R. Mallory troop ship. Also torpedo, also North Atlantic, another 208 troops not making it overseas. And again, this is just February. I'm seeing if I can fit all of February on one screen, just barely. And that's the shortest one.
See, there are some attacks where they didn't lose any crew.
Right, little damage. There was an attack here. Yeah.
Wow.
So they've been going through for some time, clearly documenting this. And I mean, this is just 1 month of 1 year. And they've got that all taken care of. So if anybody is looking into this subject, just the naval ships that are being sunk, and clearly they're including the Pacific here in both theaters. This is something to take a look at usmm.org, because it also specifically focuses on the American ships. Now, this isn't to mention all of the ships engaged in the war in general from all the different countries. This is just the United States. The list is far bigger if you include everybody else being lost at sea. But I think potentially if they're talking about troop ships and that letter was mid-February, I'm very suspicious that the 2 ships being mentioned in that letter were the Dorchester and the Henry Mallory, because it specifically contains well over 100 troops that went down with the ships. So,
yeah, those definitely would have the most. That would be the most.
Probably the largest, right? If you think about news making its way to Iowa, yeah, So that really could be it. But then
Those were
again,
that was a big blow. I mean, all the other, like you're seeing, like maybe a couple crew members died. Certain, I mean, and you don't know if any of these ships. So these ships sunk or had damage.
Right.
Like, so
As a
this is,
result.
as a result. Wow. Still, it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
That we, first of all, that we had that many ships.
Right. Yeah. Think about the water, how busy the Atlantic, the Pacific is, how much more is going by ship. And then you think about the freight moving, how many letters are being sent that never make it to their destination if you've got going by the post, depending how they're actually going overseas, whether it's by air or just going, by way of the ships. So, but we know that it's taking a month for the front to write letters and make it back. So I have to suspect a lot of it's going by sea.
You have to.
Yeah. But at any rate, wanted to at least follow up on that from the previous week so we get a better view of that. And then that's it for today's episode. Everybody, please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie podcast. We're getting higher and higher in the rankings here. We're picking up more views, and that's really, really exciting. We hope everybody's enjoying the content. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the other platforms, please leave a review if you have the time to do so. We really, really appreciate that. And you'll want to check out lovesweetiepodcast.com. There are going to be a lot of photographs being updated into the website, especially later this month and as we head into August. So keep your eyes for some changes to Love Sweetie Podcast as I would say our cast of characters continues to expand.
Yes. And if these episodes are encouraging you to look into history or to write letters or to look into like some of your own things, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be really exciting.
Yes. So, but this was lovely, and I'm so looking forward to next Sunday.
Yep. See you next Sunday, everyone.